Not much chit chat tonight.
I'm waiting for you to say something, Chriso. You haven't even said hello yet.
I did say hello. I was just muted.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I didn't get my cup of coffee before the meeting.
I'm normally talkative and I was dealing with the YouTube thing, so you didn't hear me.
mhm.
All right. 5 o'clock. Haven't heard from Mark Siegenthaler. I assume he'll be here. Did hear from Andrew at the late part of the day. He won't be able to. Nice part about doing these things like this. I wish he could join us Zoom wise, but it is being recorded and he can catch up pretty quickly and easily, I think. Still no Mark Siegenthaler. I don't know, Ethan, if you want to wait a second, you want to start the meeting with non-agenda items? Or do you want to wait a minute?
Let's give him another minute and then we can jump in.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll show.
He was on the board for the second item on the agenda anyway. And I'll let everyone know about that. Right there.
Mhm. I see you've got it slated to go to 7 p.m. I think we can beat that.
Oh, I'm pretty sure we can. You know, I don't know how all these Zoom functions work. And if I set for 2 hours, I think at 2 hours, it kind of cuts you off. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet. So I always try to leave plenty of time.
Anita, I can only see your forehead.
Oh, I'll fix that. Thank you.
But there's some very nice stenciling on your wall.
Yeah.
That was done by Edna Cates when Martin owned this house way long time ago.
There you go.
And we just thought, oh, okay, we'll leave it there.
All right. Well, I guess we've given the minute that we said we'd give Mark, so I'll go ahead and jump this thing going. And welcome to the Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 Planning Board Workshop. This is not a formal hearing on any applications or ordinances. So we'll be welcoming participation from all planning board members in the discussion. So the first order of business would be to open up for any non-agenda items. I don't know if we have anybody, Jeremy, offline or anything that's got nothing better to do than to pay attention to our meeting.
Nope, I don't.
Oh, Ethan, I just
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Pat.
I'll send an email to you guys too, but I'm away in the month of January again. So I'm hoping I could join 1 or 2 of the meetings.
Remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just as a heads up, I
Okay.
wanted to let you know that. And just one other question. What's been going on with the climate change workshops that you guys have been having, or have they been having?
Well, my understanding is we had we started out with some climate change discussions, and then we sort of merged into the flood resiliency project, and that hasn't been meeting much lately. I think there was some scheduling issues and things like that. Jeremy, is there any update on that?
I got to follow up, but that ball's in my court right now, Ethan. I got to follow up on that. We did finish that whole survey. We did finalize that, and I've got to organize. I got to reach back out to Cooperative or Sea Grant and get another meeting set up to kind of compile everything. So that's moving.
Okay.
Pat, I will say I am looking at. I did get. I do have a revised floodplain ordinance ready to go at some point for the town, which is the new model ordinance that the state has, with a 2 foot above base flood, which is markedly different from where we're at. Most communities are at a 1 foot base flood. So if you are building in the flood zone right now, you've got to either waterproof the building or raise it a foot above that, whatever that flood level is. a better idea from a planning resiliency perspective is have that standard be 2 feet above. Some communities have gone to 3.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. But I do have that model ordinance with a 2 foot. Mark Ratner's coming in. I have that ordinance ready to probably go at any time. I just kind of have to touch base with the select board and let them know that that is ready to go. That would be an ordinance that the planning board doesn't necessarily have a public hearing on, because that's not a zone ordinance. That's a floodplain ordinance that that the select board would hold hearings on and then would go to vote, town vote. So I'm going to try to shoot for that for June vote potentially. I also want to look at and movement right now. There's a bill in the legislature, and I've was asked to comment on it on changes, and I've kind of advocated for this for a number of years with the state. There's a challenge with the state shoreline zoning rules and the floodplain management rules that are in place when it comes to raising your, if you're in the flood zone and you want to raise your, you make a significant investment in your building, and you need to therefore, or build brand new, you need to elevate that building to a certain point. But shoreline zoning height requirement, right height restrictions oftentimes limit that ability to go up. So the state DEP and the floodplain program in Augusta have actually at the pushing of, I think it was Scarborough, who drafted an ordinance that the state shoreline zoning group with DEP would have to deny. So anytime we amend the shoreline zoning ordinance, we have to send it to the state, and the state says, oh, good to go. And we move forward. Scarborough, I think it was Scarborough, did this, or maybe Cape Elizabeth, Scarborough, I think. They did an ordinance that actually did this, adjusted the height requirement, the height limits in the shoreline zone high enough to accommodate the flood zone requirements that they went after. And the DEP, that violated DEP shoreline zoning rules on height. So their local legislator down there pushed a bill into the legislature that I've been talking to DEP and floodplain for years about, and now that's moving forward. So that's kind of a good thing on a statewide level. So those things are kind of all moving forward. Flood piece and the height piece, zoning, we'll probably have to look at areas that are projects that are impacted by the new flood rules would get an exemption or an additional allowance in height is what I'm thinking to facilitate that. We ran into this with Lyman Morse. They would have liked to gone higher when they got the new development permitted, but the height requirements didn't allow it, and they're in the flood zone. So if we had a provision in place that would, if you're doing that type of investment, that's 50% or greater of fair market value of the building or a brand new building, give somebody that allowance if you're raising that minimum flood floor level. So,
hey, Jeremy,
yes.
Is it too late for, is this all going to be too late for Lyman Morse to make any adjustments?
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay.
They're practically finished.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but they've got, but it might affect the marina as well, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The phase 2 of their project would be,
Yeah. Anybody's investment in the shoreline zone. And I mean, I think people forget that the flood zone, also the river and Maguntacook Lake are in the flood zone. So it could benefit people. So those are things we're working on, Pat.
Okay,
A good summary.
great, thank you.
Yeah. All right. No more non-agenda, I don't think.
Okay, just checking. Anybody else have a non-agenda item would like to
Still see
raise?
Mark Siegenthaler.
Yeah, we're still without Mark.
Yeah.
Do you want to send him a text, Jeremy?
I have his number. I think I do.
Well, while he's doing that, I just want to say, I apologize for missing a bunch of meetings. I had some medical stuff come up that kept me out of things for a while, and it got a little crazy, but I'm back, and I'm sorry you're stuck with me.
I
You
hope you're
okay,
doing
Mark?
okay, Mark.
You.
All right, I just texted him. I'll keep watching. This
That's
next one
fine.
is
Yeah,
The
so
second
we'll move
item.
on to the second item, and I'm just going to turn it over to Jeremy as he's going to introduce the ordinance amendment.
All right, and this is something that the planning board, not you folks, Mark was on the board, and Mark Ratner probably listened to this deal before. And you guys had a hearing, the planning board, not you again, not you folks, had a hearing a couple of years ago, a year and a half or so ago, on some erosion control and sedimentation control changes that I want zoning ordinance. And let me see if I can share my screen. Hold on. Bear with me. Sorry.
Does somebody have a conversation or radio going on in the background? I'm hearing
My
something.
husband is talking. My husband is talking two rooms away. I don't think you're hearing that. Are you?
Yeah.
I think it is Jeff. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay.
We'll hold on for you, Anita.
All right.
It just keeps popping up.
She should just mute and scream at him.
That's what I always do.
How's that work out?
Not so great. The dogs definitely don't listen to me, and the family doesn't listen to me either.
And then you're in the doghouse.
But
All right. We'll wait.
Okay.
All right,
I tried
you
to
there,
send
Anita?
him upstairs. Hopefully
right.
he'll go upstairs.
It's not that
Sorry.
cold outside.
Well, so we have a weekly conversation with the grandkids on FaceTime.
Oh, there you go. All right.
So
Sorry, Anita. I'm going to try to do this. I'm trying to keep my participant window open, so in case Mark jumps in, but I may lose it while I scroll. I don't know. Let's see.
I'm trying to scroll your.
All right, I got it.
I can't. That's right.
I know. All right. So I think everyone understands the need for erosion and sedimentation control. It's a pretty significant issue for water quality, wildlife, river, stream habitat, lake habitat. It's a significant issue. It's an issue for our municipal infrastructure, ditches, catch basins, etc. And we have some existing language. It's very simple, and this is what it is in our ordinance right now. No person shall perform any act or use of the land in a manner which could cause substantial or avoidable erosion or significantly alter existing patterns of natural water flow in town. That's all that we have on the books for when we issue building permits or when people do earth moving activities on their properties, whether that's landscaping projects or lawn installation projects, or people, again, just exposing soil around on properties. There's a state law. It's called the Maine Erosion and Sedimentation Control Law that has been on the books for many years. It's a very good law. It reads very well. It's very simple to understand, and it's very simple for enforcement people to, how to address soil disturbances. And we have, again, this is our existing language. It's not great. It doesn't say anything about requirements for installation of erosion control berms or silt fences or silt socks in catch basins, those kinds of things. This is what our language reads. And I had brought this to the attention of the town I think when I first got to town, that we should really address this. And so what I did was again, the planning board had a hearing on this same exact language. It passed overwhelmingly. It went to the select board, and I don't want to say it died there, but it did die there. And I think it had to do with, if I recall correctly, agriculture was a concern on how it doesn't apply to agriculture, if I recall, was the issue. And so I can just want to go through. Again, the purpose is pretty simple, and I'm trying to create purposes when we do ordinance language, just so voters and people that are interested in this kind of stuff understand why we're trying to do this and what it's about, or a summary at least of why the language is. So what the purpose of this is again to protect town of Camden's unique water resources, what it does is it codifies the state law, erosion and sedimentation control law for the town of Camden, so that the town code office, planning office can require and enforce erosion and sedimentation control when there's soil disturbances in town. I've been doing this for a long time. This is kind of where I started in this field, was dealing with erosion and sedimentation control and lake and water quality, watershed management issues. So I'm very well versed at this stuff, and it was kind of a little mind blowing that our language was what it was. I will say that Camden is pretty darn good as of late on working with to get voluntary compliance, because again, when we have issues, we look to our zoning ordinance and our regulations on the books to see how we address them. And this is, again, a standard right here. That's what we have on the books. Doesn't say anything about, it talks about causing substantial or avoidable erosion. From my perspective, any sedimentation into a resource, whether it be a stream or a ditch or a catch basin, because all those go to a resource, is substantial. But when it comes to push comes to shove, what's substantial if we end up in court with somebody on this kind of issue? So the language is a little awkward to deal with, and it doesn't say that you've got to implement erosion and sedimentation control measures like silt fences and berms. The DEP, which can enforce this, they have one enforcement person that covers, 4 counties, pretty much. So getting them to work to help is challenging. So what this does, this language, it keeps our existing language in one here. And then the second one talks about that if you're going to displace, fill, expose soil or other earthen materials, you shall take measures to prevent unreasonable erosion of soil or sediment beyond the project site or onto any portion of a stormwater conveyance system or into a protected natural resource as defined in state law. The stormwater conveyance systems, those are things like ditches, catch basins, in larger communities that are in Bangor, Brewer, Hamden, up in Eastern Maine, just north of us, Augusta, Portland, Lewiston, Auburn. I'm not even sure Augusta, but Portland, Lewiston, Auburn, Portland, South Portland, they have requirements to address this issue, stormwater conveyance, because it is such a problem. And so we really need to include that in there. So what I did again was take all the state rules and put them in place for us. This says you got to implement erosion control measures before your activity begins. And then I included that they have to utilize the state BMP manual as a reference, and then we adopt that by incorporating that. And then this last one, I think, was the issue with this select board, at least one member had last time. This section does not apply to agriculture as defined under Maine Agricultural Protection Act. I've worked with farmers for a long time in Waldo County and Kennebec County on erosion issues. And when there's erosion issues on farms, you have to work with the Department of Agriculture. Municipalities can't bring formal enforcement action against farms. They're protected. They have to comply with agricultural BMPs, but it's the Department of Agriculture's role. It's not even DEP's role. It's Department of Agriculture's role to work with the farmers to get them to implement the BMPs. So That's why this is included here by law, a municipality. And actually, if you go to Title 7, Chapter 6, it actually explicitly says that municipalities may not enforce these kind of they call them nuisance issues in the Agricultural Protection Act. So that's why that's there. I have never, ever had a hard time once Department of Ag got involved. I've never really had a hard time working with farmers. I will say we don't really have farmers that this applies to that are exposing soil. This is generally large dairy operations where they're, tilling up fields for corn and all that. So, or they have cows in streams. So that's what that is. And again, the planning board did have a hearing on it, voted overwhelmingly in support. The select board, it went there. They just kind of, again, didn't move it forward. We need to move this forward. I'm going to take it to the select board and ask them to move it forward to voters for June. It'll give us in our office a lot of assistance when we run into these things. And again, right now we're dealing with it all the time, but we talk to the contractors and say, hey, you guys got to implement it, it's state law. And they voluntarily comply. So that's good. I will say in the shoreland zone, there is erosion sedimentation control requirements in our zoning ordinance for work within the shoreland zone, but this would apply townwide. Any questions or thoughts on that by anyone? I can stop sharing my screen.
Go ahead, Anita.
Sorry, I was just looking, I was using the screen.
Sorry, do you want me to bring it back?
Well, I can go to my copy. So there's one minor comment that, legalese is pretty hard to follow when it's full of commas. Under double I, under proposed language, would you be willing to throw in parentheses after activity and before weather? And then after materials, because I found I had to read this about 3 or 4 times before I could actually follow the sentence.
Okay.
There's just too many commas.
Okay.
You can't find the subject and the verb and the object. So that, I think that would be helpful.
All right.
And I wanted to ask you another question. You said this is state law and we're incorporating state law into town law. If it's state law, are you saying that the problem is that because it's state law, the town code enforcement officer cannot enforce it, and therefore it needs to be a town ordinance in order for the local town people to enforce it?
Correct.
So in order to be,
Otherwise you're headed to the DEP.
so in order to be enforced presently, if somebody is not voluntarily agreeing to follow your suggestions, you have to call in somebody from DEP?
Yes, unless I can determine something was substantial or avoidable. And I'd rather not, you kind of have, that happens at the end, right? That happens after there's an impact to the resource already.
Right. You're when they're doing the work, you're predicting what might happen by what is or isn't put in place.
Right.
Right. So would you care to explain or present to the board 1 or 2 examples from your experience where, geez, you wish this had been in place, or what problems you've run into that this will resolve?
There isn't a week that goes by that our office doesn't get a phone call or that we see somebody doing soil disturbance. Again, we've dealt with a lot of these this year that have been like full-on lawn replacements, where they remove entire lawn and bring in sod, or remove the lawn and seed the whole lawn, and we're talking thousands of square feet. Thousands and thousands of square feet in some cases, where you have the whole lawn stripped, and we have rain coming, And we have catch basins, municipal catch basins down the road and ditches down the road that go to a brook that then goes into another brook. And just by experience and knowledge, I mean, what happens, water, runs downhill. When it hits the ground, it picks up soil particles. Soil particles get, suspended in the water column as the water's flowing down into the brook. So those are the things that we want to avoid, and we have avoided, I think, a fair amount of those. Obviously, some of these events lately, these rainstorms have been catastrophic, really. So any river or stream or brook you go to and it's running mud brown and you can't deal with some of those events. I mean, nothing is designed to deal with some of these storms we've had, especially over Halloween, but it's a regular occurrence, Anita, where we need something like this. And again, we're always generally in compliance. But what I want to do is I want to be able for our office to, when we issue a building permit or this comes to somebody's attention, we can hand out and send with the building permit a little one pager that says there's an erosion control law or rule in the town of Camden, and this is what you need to do. So that everyone gets it from the get-go. It's not a suggestion, it's a requirement. Most communities that, I think similar to Camden that have the resources we have and have the types of folks that are concerned and about those resources that live in our community have these types of zoning regulations to protect those resources.
So people who do not follow the new law that you're putting in place would be fined or?
Well, as with anything, Anita, I mean, keep in mind, there's we've got a bunch of rules that people have to comply with. We have them on lights, have rules that say you can't have a stray or dazzling light leave your property. How do we deal with that? We work with, and that's a rule, right? That's a requirement. We communicate with the property owner. We let them know what the ordinance is and say, hey, it's come to our attention that this has happened. That your light is leaving your property, shining into your neighbor's window. We have a rule ordinance that says you can't do that. Can you please work with us but we don't find those folks. We don't, they're just working with us. We're working with them. We resolve the issue situation and we move on. That's this happened. I mean, these kinds of things, and it would be the same way. 98% of the time it's, we're working with them and they're working with us and they're listening to what we need them to do. From time to time, you have issues where you've got muddy water. I mean, we had a significant one at the middle school when they were building it. I mean, that was a massive, massive issue. That was an unavoidable for sure, or avoidable for sure. But we were prepared to issue them or, take them to court and issue some financial penalties. So if it's egregious, I think we would seek penalties. But, we always like to work with people, Anita. We just want people to do what's right we have these rules and ordinances in place for a reason. Generally, they're to protect public health, people's property, public property, or a resource. So,
Thank you. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. You guys like it? I mean, can I schedule a hearing for this? I mean, I asked the town attorney if we actually had to do a hearing because the planning board heard this like 2.5 years ago, and he actually said we have to. So,
yeah, I'm all for it. How about you, Pat?
Yes.
Okay, and Anita and Christo.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah. Any questions? Anyone? Further?
Mark voted for it the last time.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward to me. So thanks for bringing it up again, Jeremy. I think we should move it along.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. All right, next one. Next thing on the agenda was
Something about
oh yeah,
discussion
okay,
of the
so
Maine Commission to increase housing opportunities in Maine.
Yeah, we've been talking about housing, affordable housing, how to do this. What can you do? What do we do? I think everyone knows okay, sharing my screen again. All right. We did, Jeannie entered the room. There we go. Sorry.
Hi,
We
Jeannie.
did accessory apartments a couple of years ago. And we've had a handful of those get permitted, and those are moving along. And what those were, accessory apartments by ordinance, 600 square feet or less, has to be somebody's primary residence for who lives in that dwelling, and that was to address kind of the short-term housing or short-term rental situation. But I think everyone knows, and I will say I've also been working with a group of folks. It started out Camden folks, and then it kind of expanded. Now it goes all the way down to St. George, and even Bath kind of tried to jump into it, and up to Stockton Springs. And this is looking at developing a housing trust similar to the Island Housing Trust on MDI. That works in 3 different communities down there on trying to address housing issues and affordable housing, and they do developments and things. That's been moving along quite nicely, actually, and it's kind of happening in the background. And I think in this near future, there'll be probably some public announcement on that kind of thing. So we're excited about that. When we may be partnering with another organization locally to kind of get something off the ground. And this would be not a municipal entity. This would be either a nonprofit or an existing nonprofit would work with, again, the communities in the region to try to work on affordable housing. The legislature, as you can imagine, is trying to address this. Val Geiger out of Rockland had proposed a state law that would, for the most part, allow accessory dwelling units by right on every property with limited restrictions on those, even when it came to things like lot coverage and things like that, setbacks. And I think the intent was good. I think the proposed legislation was bad, my personal opinion. But I think the legislature thought the same thing. I think there were a lot of people lobbying on this issue. Maine Municipal Association was, I think, pretty active on it. And so what the legislature did was they created a commission to increase housing opportunities in Maine by studying zoning and land use restrictions, which for me, and it's kind of unfortunate that this is strictly how they're looking at this, and maybe they're looking at it in a broader context somewhere else. But I think we've talked about it. There's a lot of things that impact housing, affordability, and availability. It's not just zoning and land use. There's land costs, building materials costs. There's labor shortages. There's a lot behind this. And if you look at our population growth in this last number of years, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I don't think our population is growing all that much. I know it has since COVID, but it'll be interesting to see when the next round of.
But that's a chicken or egg issue because you can't
You're
grow
right.
if there's no place to live.
It's true. Okay, so it's true, and I think I was going to make a point on this. And so here, the commission has been working. I haven't been really involved, but Maine Municipal has, and some other planners in the state have kind of kept their tab on it, and I've kind of regrouped on that from that perspective to try to see what's happening. I sent this to you all earlier. There's a lot here. If you read through it, there's on accessory dwelling units, single and multifamily zoning, fair housing, technical assistance, incentives, and housing trusts, priority development areas, and fees, income, lot size, a bunch of other stuff. So I don't want to go through any of this or all of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's important as we move forward to see where Augusta is. There's a lot here, and there's pros and cons to home rule. And I me personally tend to be one that's more home rule side. If you read these, there's a lot here again that would require towns to do certain things in zoning and land use perspective. And as a planner, I think I look at this from both sides. It's a tough one. our communities are kind of what they are because of how historically they've been developed over time, and neighborhoods are the way they are. And I think they're a core thing in Maine, which makes Maine pretty unique. So I think my personal opinion, treading lightly when it comes to requiring municipalities to do certain things, their zoning wise. I have varying opinions on that. Some of these, though, are pretty something else. And these are suggestions, and these commissioners these are people that the legislature, again, created this commission. And some are legislators, some are people in the business of planning. Kate Dufour, she's MMA's, Maine Municipal Association's big lobbyist. So she was at the table. There are lots of people that were involved, but some of these are pretty something else. One of these recommendations would be elimination of single-family zoning restrictions in residential zones across the state, allowing up to 4 residential units on all lots. And there's a sunrise clause. I mean, that's pretty significant. That's huge. I mean, and you never know, like all these things aren't just going to happen in your neighborhood overnight. But there's I think a lot there. And I wanted to share these with you all because there's a lot happening on the state level right now on this issue. I will say I've read through this. There's not much talk about short-term rentals. And I am a firm believer that a significant part of our housing issue and crisis in the state, especially the mid-coast, are short-term rentals. I don't see how you can take that out of the equation. I mean, they take short-term rentals outside of ones that are owned by people as their primary residence, and they go away and they, for weekends or weeks at a time in the summer. And we talked about that. But rentals that end up being short-term rentals all the time. It's nobody's home. That's happening a lot across the state. And again, when we talk about housing, the loss of housing and the population is, how do you attract? Well, I think we did at some point have housing, and then short-term rental business came into the world, and I think a lot of housing's been getting eaten up. I mean, there isn't a couple of weeks that a month I get a handful of calls that say, "Hey, we're looking at buying a property in Camden. What are your short-term rental rules?" It's happening all the time.
They just ask it straight out. Oh.
Yeah, they ask it straight out. There's companies that are real estate investment trusts, I think, that are buying properties up across the country in prime locations, just working the short-term rental thing. I mean, some of these homes are going for $4,000 to $6,000 to $15,000 a week, as I understand.
Hey, Jeremy?
Yes, sir.
Did you just see Bar Harbor just passed some new rules about vacation rentals? Did you see that? Just really quickly, vacation rental vote was the tightest question. 1260 yes votes, 840 no votes. The new rules will split rentals into 2 categories. Rentals that are in the owner's primary residence and rental properties that are not. And so they're working on this as well. So it's something we need to get back and focusing on, because we talked about registration.
Well, we did pass an ordinance, Mark. Remember, we did pass an ordinance, and I've actually was on the phone today with a company that I'm going to be hoping to chat with Audra about, that can work with us on. One of our challenges in our ordinance that we passed that I found is how we defined unhosted and hosted. That's a challenge for implementation of enforcement. Really is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So I've got some ideas, and I've been working with some folks on that, and likely coming in June, there'll be a tweak to that definition in order to make it work. So that's where we are. And I think these, there's a lot here, a lot to digest. I think it's, we can do what we can. Again, I'm never certain if, no matter what you do, are you going to create more housing? I think everyone knows what Camden is, where we are in our real estate market. sometimes the forces are against you. I mean, land is very expensive, houses are very expensive, there's nothing on the market. And so, you know, a lot of these things are aimed at either redeveloping existing homes or making, you know, new developments easier and more affordable for people. What I think, because land costs are what they are and the infrastructure we have in Camden, I think we need to focus more on the density and the existing infrastructure we have, the existing housing stock we have. So I think moving on, Ethan, to item 4, unless anyone wants to talk about that, I think maybe we keep going. I was just going to run into where we kind of left off the last time, and then maybe answer some questions and talk about it after that. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I had a chance to review it, and you're right, it is packed with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And each one could be its own discussion. But thank you for the summary. I think it's helpful to see where the state is leaning on some of this stuff. And you certainly have a grab bag of ideas to look at, and we can start to cherry pick maybe certain ones that make the most sense for Camden.
Right.
And I do agree with both you and Mark that we're going to have to face the short-term rental question. But I think we'll also not dive down that rabbit hole right now. So that does lead us to agenda item. I'm sorry, was somebody wanted to say something? Anita?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance when you were sort of scrolling around on that document to discover whether there's any discussion about a different taxation structure for short-term rentals. And is this something that we would take into consideration? And do you have any models for that?
I think there was, I thought there was a piece, one of these things I think brought it up.
There is a section on incentive programs and density bonuses,
Right.
and they talk some about that.
And
Is that actually, it seems like I don't know, yeah, some kind of a financial disincentive. I don't know how it would be structured too.
Yeah, they're looking at it, and I did have the conversation with Carrie, our assessor, town assessor, and Carrie's really savvy on. I mean, he's a really amazing assessor and very smart. Right now there's state law, and someone I think is Kessler out of South Portland, a fairly progressive legislator out of South Portland. I think he's an energy guy. He was pushing something that you're talking right now, Anita, about. And I asked recently Carrie if that would work here in Maine. And it would need a change of tax law or the assessment rules in the state on the state level. So we can't do anything locally really outside of incentives, and you can do local affordable housing TIFs, TIF districts. You can do those kinds of things. But again, I think, you know, in Dovetail and Northland on the Tannery project, they were looking at affordable housing TIF. I mean, that's the only way to make projects like that work in the state of Maine, is to get those incentives either through a TIF or tax credits, low-income housing tax credits. Other than that, there's not much affordable housing being built. So
I think a good point was made about or the COVID situation, which hopefully would not continue, where landlords could not evict anyone. So there were, at that time, there's certainly a disincentive for landlords to do long-term rentals. But on the other hand, in our region, we can't ignore the fact that there is a strong need for short-term rentals, because basically we support tourism. So we are a tourist destination. So there's got to be it's hard to find a balance, but long-term year-round rentals are definitely needed.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can go on there.
What do you want us to do with regard to these
This,
suggestions by the commission?
I just
and-
wanted you to start thinking about them and looking at them. Again, I think what Ethan said, if there are some that you think that we could cherry pick out of here and maybe try to look at, I think that's what we're trying to do on the next, what I wanted to talk about next, is look at lot size and things like that and density.
Right, which is a great segue then to move on to number 4, which is the contemplated amendment to village extension for lots with no public sewer service. As Jeremy has as we discussed before. So let's move on into that agenda item. And Jeremy, you can go ahead and give a brief summary again. I think everybody present was in our last discussion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to share my screen really quick. All right, and that's just kind of up for now, but unless you want me to put that away, because I think it's pertinent and relevant. But we don't have the village extension here, but maybe I'll stop it for now. We had talked about in the village extension prior. Right now, minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. If you're not on town sewer, it's 40,000. I had looked at changing the village extension to go to 20,000 square feet, which is the state minimum lot size for house dwelling units with an on-site wastewater septic. And we talked about it, and Mark had some concerns about it. I think character changing, I think, is probably what he was probably getting at, like that could change the character of the village extension, some of those areas. And the village extension, is kind of that connection from the village, between the village and the more rural part of Camden. So I can appreciate where he's coming from. And so after that, it kind of died and we kind of moved on to some other things. Since we've been talking about housing, the last time we talked about housing, this came up and we said, okay, can we, do you see my screen? Hold on. Nope. Stop share. Mark suggested, why don't we just allow 1 and 2 family homes? There's what I was looking for. Allow 1 and 2 family homes in the village extension to be on 40,000 square feet. And I think that's probably a great way to move this forward. I'm going to go to share my screen because I think I have it. There we go. Village extension right now with 10,000 square feet, with sewer 40 without sewer. So this is what my suggestion would be, to go to 40,000. I've changed this already. I started working on it. It would be to go to 40,000 for a 2-family home. Those aren't all exactly right there. So that's what I was hoping to do. I think it makes total sense to keep the lot size requirement at 40,000, but allow a 2-family home on 40,000 square feet as opposed to 1.
Would that also be a two dwelling units possibility?
Well, that's what a family home is. So I think we need to be cautious. And I think this is Mark's concern about character, is if you start to chop it up so much. And same for in the village, what I'm going to be looking at is looking at allowing 1 and 2 family homes on, say, 10,000 square feet, rather than really diving into like how many square feet do you need per lot size. Just say 1 and 2 family homes, you can have them in 10,000 square feet. And that's kind of—
And to answer your question, Anita, I think we're talking about not 2 separate dwelling units.
Right.
Not 2 separate buildings. We're talking about two family homes, so a subdivided home
So it's a duplex, basically.
of sorts, right?
A duplex
Of
on
sorts.
40,000 square feet.
Yeah. They would still get, from my perspective, and I got to look at, I think that we still should allow that 600 square foot accessory apartment.
Per each
Okay,
unit, or
but
just in addition to the 2 units?
In addition to the 2.
What's the incentive of somebody who is in a semi-rural area to put a duplex there and want to live in a duplex That's kind of an in-town type of dwelling, a duplex. I mean,
Well,
I'm not convinced of that. I mean,
me neither.
you know, people will put in 2 units in a home, you know, I mean, think about even like, you know, go out to Belfast in the Eco Village. They've got those, what I guess they look like townhomes or whatever. It's a development project, obviously. But there's plenty of people out there who are not living in the town, like, you know, downtown or in the village, who live out in that kind of a house or arrangement. So we're just trying to provide some more flexibility and do it that's not in a way that's not super disruptive and makes common sense. I think that was Mark's concern, right? Is that you could take and build another home on a 40,000 square foot lot, and all of a sudden you've got a different feel and character. We can still decide as a board that that's something that we want to support. One board member being against it doesn't run it through. But I think what Jeremy's proposing here is sort of an easier way to move it, at least provide a little bit more opportunity for people who want to add dwelling units without building a new home. Chriso, I heard you wanted to chime in. Go ahead, Chriso.
Yeah, well, what you just said sort of changed a little bit of what I'm thinking.
Uh-oh.
Is it just me, or is it everybody that Chriso's cutting out?
He froze
Yeah,
for
he
everyone.
froze.
He froze and then disappeared.
He'll be back. I have confidence.
Right.
he froze.
Can I
already.
ask my question then?
Go ahead, Pat.
Well, this is back again to the affordable housing concept, right? That we're talking about these reductions in lot sizes, I thought.
I don't think it's about necessarily affordable housing. I think it's housing availability. Are there more opportunities for
Oh,
housing?
okay.
Can we facilitate more housing? I
All
mean,
right.
you know, when I look at it, even Mark's house, I don't know if you all know where Mark lives, out on 52.
Okay.
He's got, you know, it's an old farmhouse type house that I could envision having a second unit in the back of. And it would change nothing in the character of the area. But now all of a sudden there's a second unit on that property. And I think
we should have a site visit to Mark's house.
well, I mean, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to that. And it again, it doesn't really change a lot, but it gives people the flexibility to do something different. Or even if you know, somebody's in-laws, you know, need to move in with them, and a 600 square foot apartment doesn't work, or they want something bigger, or someone's got a large home and they're living by themselves.
Okay.
Just give them an opportunity to potentially, I mean, they got to get building permits and make sure it's code compliant and all that. But have the ability to have a second apartment on there. Doing that is much, much, much cheaper than building brand new building.
Sure. Okay. I see where you're coming from. Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, I want to visit Chriso's house. He's got the nicest bookshelves I've seen.
Yeah.
Chriso, you're back now. You went into a sort of a freeze. So do you want to ask your question or make your point? You're on mute now.
I think some of what I was starting to say was I had been thinking of it in terms of like somebody building a new structure as a 2-family unit structure being potentially a very large house, which we may not want if the alternative would be 2 small houses on a 40,000 acre lot. It's a different, to me, it's a different thing than what you guys are talking about of someone who has a house and wants to add onto it more than the 600, more than an accessory unit. So for me, I still like the option of, which would be more even to sort of the co-living idea in Belfast of, you know, allowing 2 smaller houses on that lot, which maybe there's some square footage maximums of the structure that you say you could have two separate one-family units on that lot, but they can't be over a certain size.
So
I
are
just-
you concerned about having these really larger structures for two-family homes coming up?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about maintaining the character of the extension of that part of town, like, I could see a pretty large, somebody who's trying to make their money out of it could build a pretty big two-family.
Yeah. Chris, so I hear you. I think it's, we have regulations on building lot coverage.
Right.
Existing in the ordinance. They're not right now in the village extension. If you're not on sewer, you could cover, your maximum building coverage is 10%.
Right.
So that's not going to change. I wasn't thinking of changing that. So you can still get that, 4,000 square foot footprint of a house, right? Right now.
Right. I'm just thinking it could be a 3-story, it could be, in terms of, to Ethan's point of who's going to want to live, or I guess maybe it was Anita, of who wants to live in a duplex, you could build something pretty big. And I don't think that the two separate structures is such a big issue. I think that could be done in a way that they aren't huge and they are set on the lot in a nice way. I just don't think we should do one without the other.
And should we cap the size of both of those structures?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm trying to get my head
what are
around
people's-
that issue.
Two standalone single family homes?
I mean, is it better to have two homes on a single lot or reduce the lot size?
Well, if you did it, one of the things I'm thinking is if you did it on a single lot, and if you have the right developer, they could share septic and well, for example.
And driveway?
And yeah, so you could have it in a way that, it's less impact on that whole lot. Instead of, there's one curb cut, there's two houses, there's one set of open space for septic and well. I mean, those.
Right. But as far as real estate is concerned, that's going to be owned by one person. It's pretty hard to deed a house without land. So you could give it life estate or something like that. But I mean, in the end, you're talking about as a rental property only.
Yeah.
Which I guess I can't see, that might not be different than in a duplex situation anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're still
sharing,
unless you do it as a condo.
right? Or joint tenants. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't have any particular objection to two buildings on the same lot. Jeremy, are there any other problems in the zoning ordinance with that?
No, I think it's just figuring out how to craft it, I think that makes sense as long as it is on the same lot. I think that then at least maintains, like you're saying, Ethan, generally that's going to happen when somebody owns that, right? And it's going to be probably one of the people living in one of those homes, in one of the buildings.
Right.
And so they're going to control it. And go ahead.
Okay, so the current requirement of 40,000 square feet for a dwelling unit, that's for non-septic, right? Or non-sewer.
Non-sewer.
So, and that's largely due to the fact that you have to do placement of the septic and leach field. I mean, is that a state requirement right there, or is that?
State requirement is 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah, so weren't we talking about going down to 20,000 in the village extension anyway?
We were, right.
That's what I thought.
Because that seems to provide more flexibility as well, and that's the one that I was more like. I have no issue with this one, so I'm not trying to torpedo it, but you could do this and that in the same stroke, and give all those different. Because I mean, the same concern, if you're doing a two family unit, whether it's two separate houses or a duplex, you're possibly increasing the sewer use or the septic use by another household. It could be up to 5 or 6 people. So the same concerns would be there as far as the capability of the septic to handle however many people. So if you have 20,000 square feet, and then also you can put this in as well, it just gives people more flexibility with how they want to treat the property and whether it allows for the building. Was that a concern? You thought that Mark was concerned about the character of the neighborhood with the 20,000 square foot lots?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't share that concern. I think it's fairly reasonable. A 20,000 square foot lot with a home on it is a pretty decent chunk. And we're trying to give more options. And I don't think we're going to see. How would that affect something along the lines of like a development, Jeremy?
How would it change things?
Yeah, I mean, are they subdivisions out there? Are they required right now to have 40,000 square foot lots?
Yeah, I mean, if you're out in the
It can be, yeah.
yeah.
So that's probably Mark's greater concern, right? Is a subdivision going down to 20,000 square feet?
I don't want to speak for him. I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, what's the difference if you punch a road in and do, 20,000 square foot lots, or you just jam 4 20,000 square foot lots right along 52? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what his real concern is, but it felt like character was his concern, and it's not sewered. It's not like the other village extension zone that has less, lot size requirements because it is sewered.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's where I will fall is support for this, and also for reducing the lot size to 20,000 out there.
Okay.
That's where I'm leaning. I don't know, Anita.
Thank you, Ethan. I tend to lean towards your point of view of reducing the lot size. I certainly see real complications with 2 separate dwelling units under one owner and a single driveway under one owner, and this sort of, which can work for some people, but it would get kind of sticky, especially as time goes forward. It's one thing when a particular family develops it in that way, and it's quite another when they need to sell and get 2 different owners into it. It gets complicated. So I think the 20,000 coming to meet the state minimum makes sense to me, and allowing a 2-family on one dwelling unit in the 40,000 would work. Then you need to think about, are you talking about maybe a 2-family on the 20,000? Probably not. And that would need to be clarified. But in other words, if you retain the 40,000 square foot lot, somebody has a 40,000 minimum square lot, and they want to put a 2-family dwelling unit or divide the dwelling unit into 2, that could be okay.
Right.
And then if you want to split your lot, or you want to develop a lot at 20,000, that would be permissible. I don't see it all of a sudden everything being chopped in half.
Yeah, no, I don't see this
The
big
rules
run
have
to market,
changed in this
everybody
one.
chopping up their land. More people would probably try to acquire a neighboring property than chop. That's the reality of it. And yeah, I mean, it could happen. It could be that someone, buys up, a couple lots and a couple new houses spring up. I don't think that's a terrible thing.
Right.
Chris,
I
I know
just
you
don't
wanted to
see it
jump in.
changing it suddenly.
No, I think that, the other thing, and I'm just looking at I have my second screen, and I'm looking at the map. It starts us on the path also to a little bit giving developers the idea of, I don't think that any of us want to see little micro dots of houses out there, but it gives somebody the option of saying, you know, in a 10-acre parcel, putting the houses in more of a cluster, as we've talked about, by reducing the lot size in some of those developments, they could shift their open space. So I just think it gives more flexibility, which will lead to potentially smaller and more affordable houses. So I think the 20,000 square foot lot size is fine.
So would a cluster development, I think that concept is very good when it works, to enable people to share the resources that as they can, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it also just, to me, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
To me, it gives somebody the option to, you know, instead of having 2 and 3 acre lots per house where the houses feel spread out, you could have a few houses that are close together, and then sort of the backside of is more preserved. And so we're not developing as much land to create the houses.
I like
Right.
that. I really like something that
And that's
encourages
what-
that type of
Remember the
development.
open space changes we did would facilitate more.
Right, we've already
Thank
gone
you.
through that
Right.
as well.
That
Yeah.
starts
But
the process.
that
but
wasn't for this zone, was it? Was that covering this zone, Jeremy?
Well, it kind of did.
Village
The
extension?
extension was already not mandatory.
Right.
We didn't really change that, but I believe we changed it in such a way that it allows all that clustering to continue.
Right.
Right. Pat, we've all jumped in. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that?
Nothing to add. I think having the 20,000 minimum would be helpful, as you guys were discussing, as far as giving more ability or having the ability to configure in a certain way if it's needed
Yeah.
for more housing. I think that's a good idea.
Do you?
Okay, Jeremy, is that what you need for marching orders as far as?
Yeah. So my thoughts, I guess, are to take that and maybe just draft some language, and then with Mark here, we can bring all the different pieces and parts or options or this and that, and have that as, you know, and then you guys vote on that, have a discussion, and then you guys can let me know yay or nay if you like them, or which ones you do want to move forward. And again, you know, I appreciate we all have different perspective, and we all have different values in what we see and would like to have happen. And so it may not be unanimous coming from the planning board. I think that's okay.
Can you give us a GIS map showing 40,000 square foot lots in the?
I did do that when we started this
You
along.
have that somewhere still, probably?
I do. I can send those around.
Yeah, that'd be great to just have a look at so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The possibilities there.
Perfect.
Just identifying any lots that are greater than 40,000.
Sorry.
Good.
Ethan,
Yes,
I just
Pat.
had one more question. Where Chriso was expressing concern about putting up a large house on a 40th, like if it was a large 2-family house on a 40,000 square foot piece of land, doesn't the code, what Jeremy talked about, already kind of dictate that the footprint of the home can only be so big? So wouldn't
Yeah, and
that
I think
be,
he said it was 10%. So you're looking at, for a 40,000 square foot lot, I think we're looking at what, a 4,000 square foot home?
4,000.
Yep, if my math is
Four
correct,
thou-
it's
so
not my
that-
forte. It's not a huge home. I mean, it's
no, that
big.
shouldn't be bad.
Yeah, and if you, that 2,000 square feet of living space per family is a pretty, you know, it's again, it's a fair amount of space, but it's not gigantic.
Right, okay.
So we're not talking about, but I mean, again, I guess, Jeremy, it could go up if somebody has a 100,000 square foot lot. Can they put up a 10,000 square foot home and then subdivide it in half and make two 5,000, or even a 2 and a 8? I mean, they can do that anyway right now.
Right.
Right.
And you know, to Christo's point, yeah, they might do it in the desire or in the design to do it as a duplex, but there are plenty of people putting up giant houses that don't get you know, sort of looked askance at, right? Because they're entitled to do that. So
2 families and 4,000 square feet is better than 1 family.
agreed.
Well, if you look at, I mean, just take this, I think reading, I don't know if you had time to digest any of that commission on housing and zoning, but in there, you know, there's about incentives.
Yeah.
On you know, housing. So you look at, if you dive into it, you'll see there's, I mean, they're talking about all these kinds of things. So I think we can do what we can, and then the state may come and say, you must do X, Y. I think that's going to be unlikely, but on a lot of that, but I think we ought to try to do what we can. So, all right, I'll move that along.
Yep. So that moves us into number 6, which is next steps and meetings. So Jeremy, that's the one I guess we've asked that you.
No, really quick.
Well, you skipped the
You missed
GIS
one.
map.
Yeah,
Oh,
this one.
well, I thought we were looking at the GIS map.
No,
No,
this,
smaller parcel.
am I sharing my screen?
No,
Yeah.
No.
Hold on. Cancel.
This is the one with the pretty candy color lots.
Yes. Sharing my screen.
I will just say, I very much appreciated, as someone who has colorblind issues, the very distinct different colors on here are great.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Chris. So the former city attorney in Bangor that I worked with for a long time was colorblind, full on colorblind. So he could not, you know, nothing could be any color. It had to be underlined.
Yeah. But a lot of times these things are just like yellows and oranges, and I
Yeah.
can't see it all.
Well, I'll say something, Leticia. I do want her to, I mean, this is a draft. I got this just, you know, December 2nd, see the date on that. So
Is it possible that Crystal can't see the yellow and oranges on this map?
No, I do see that.
Because there's lots of them.
No, but the difference is that there's a yellow and an orange. It's not like it's not like 6 shades of yellow, orange, and brown. That
mine is dark greens and blues, whereas I have a color anomaly there. So I share your
all right.
concerns.
Really quick on this. So this is the little inset. I mean, this is draft, and I'm going to get her to tweak this because these. When I first look at this, I'm like, oh, that must be water, right? No, it's actually, I mean, that's the
zone.
River. Yeah, that's the Stannery area right there. So, and this is like the downtown, right? So I do want to tweak it a little bit. But this is just came from our discussion last week, and I've got actually assessing gave me some good data, good information too. But generally, I mean, you look at our lot size in the village zone, minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. If you look at 10,000 plus, we have almost 1,000 parcels in the village zone that are 10,000 square feet. I was curious about this because I think it really dictates, from my perspective, it's just my opinion, take it, you know, or not. I think it's important to look at what the existing conditions are and what the existing neighborhoods are like. And, you know, I think especially when you start talking about reducing lot sizes and increasing density, it's important, again, from my perspective, to maintain character and community, you know, the neighborhood. And if you do start chopping it up, you know, it could change it. But so I think, again, it was important to look at to see what we really had, how many of our, you know, lots met our standard, or did we have most of our lots at, you know, 8,000 square feet when we had a 10,000 square foot standard. So you can tell, and again, I just got this from Leticia at Knox County, but most of our lots are 10,000. I want to refine this more to see, like, to call out some of these subdivisions, right? Here's Mount Narrow. Those are subdivisions that we're not going to have the ability to deal with, right? We're not going to be able to reduce lot sizes in there. There are deed covenants, deed restrictions, and when these were approved, they were approved at that size. So I would like to kind of call some of those out of here, and then just kind of really look at some of these larger parcels, kind of identify which ones they are, and really get a good understanding of them. But I think this is very helpful when we're looking at density in the village zone. Based on the discussion we just had, I think it's a little different but similar. I had initially thought of really starting to look at, should we reduce the lot size to 8,000 square feet, or whatever. And remember, we're talking about 1 and 2 family homes, which are allowed in the village. You can have multifamily too, but the lot size starts, it's 7,500 square foot per dwelling unit when you're go above the single family home. So I was thinking, my perspective at this was really looking at, what about adding the 1 and 2 families on a 10,000 square foot lot, and just by right to change that. That was my initial thought. I think I'd like more discussion on that and thoughts from you, either now or in the future. Or do we go, 10,000 square feet for the first 2 and then 5,000 for every unit thereafter, because we do allow multifamily currently in the village zone. And then something we need to look at too, I think, but I'm not sure how hard, is how we defined the short-term rentals before. And do we want to allow, right now, if you recall, the accessory apartments, which are 6,000 square feet or less, those are exempt from lot size requirements. So currently you could have your primary home on your 10,000 square foot lot and put an apartment in your attached garage or detached garage that's 600 square feet and not have to add the additional 7,500 square feet, what is required, is currently required for a 2-unit home. So I'm of the perspective of continuing to kind of allow the accessory apartments to continue without an increased lot size requirement, and adding 1 and 2 family homes allowed on a 10,000 square foot lot. That was my initial thought. Any other thoughts from you folks or on that? I can stop sharing my screen. And again, I'm going to try to get this map to identify things a little bit more, like the river and the tannery park property, the middle school property right here, the subdivisions, and then the current zones downtown. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts on this? I can stop sharing my screen.
I'm confused about some aspects of that drawing. Looking at that, I kind of wanted to jump in and start looking at the town assessment map to say, well, that lot looks just as small as the other ones that have been colored, but it's not colored. So I'm confused about whether some of these smaller ones there might be 2-family, or you mentioned 2-family as not being identified there. And so I wonder if you can just.
No
that
dwelling unit information is identified here at all.
Just lots.
Yeah. But
This is strictly lot size.
just visually looking at it, there's from this scale, which isn't very helpful, I'm sure, it seems like there are others that are similarly small that aren't colored.
Well, remember, 10,000 is the limit. So if one, like if we're over here on Hardin Ave, well, Hardin, that's not maybe a good one, but if you're at 10,000 and the one next to you at 9,400, that's going to come in at a different color.
I understand. You've got an arrow, for instance, on a small one there on Cross Street that's white. That looks smaller than the orange one next to it. It's that sort of thing. I'm curious.
Yeah.
About.
Well, this is all real, true data right here. So this must be a case of, again, one may be 10,000 and the next one is 9,800.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out. Any thoughts or direction from you folks?
It's helpful to see the distribution of the smaller lots.
Oh, it is. It really is. Look
Yeah.
at Jacobs Ave over here. And I think it really shows the kind of the neighborhoods, very well. I think it'll show that even more when we can pull up the, the downtown zone and BR, but
Are you thinking that we would use this as a way to determine where lot sizes might be smaller and fit in with that particular neighborhood? Or are you considering lot size changes in this whole zone, the whole village?
I think
zone?
initially the conversation was what do we have? What are the existing lots like? And how many of our lots meet our standard? How many don't? And
Right.
percentage. I think it's pretty clear that you look at this area, it's that's quite a neighborhood. And I was curious, especially over here in Pearl, and wonder what the sizes were, and did they meet our requirements. And I mean, I wasn't thinking, to be honest, of how could we break these up. I was more thinking along the lines of, in our existing neighborhoods, what can we do to not necessarily create smaller lots, but allow, a lot of these have big old homes, big homes on them. And most of them are well maintained. There are others that are not necessarily so well maintained, but I hear a lot from folks that have, hey, I've got an old home. I mean, BD Parker comments to me all the time about trying to figure out how to let these big old
Right.
homes, let people have another dwelling unit in them.
Right.
It doesn't increase lot coverage. It doesn't add more building, more impervious surface to a site in the built up area. What it does do is allow people to take advantage of their existing homes.
So
Yeah.
how is that
Yes.
addressed in this map? Or how does this map help address that question?
Well, from my perspective, I appreciate and value the neighborhoods and the existing conditions of Camden's lot sizes, to be honest. I think they work very well. I would rather, in these neighborhoods, rather than allow these people to split these lots smaller to 5,000 square foot lots, from my perspective, would be to allow those lots to stay those 10,000 square foot lots, but I'll give them the opportunity to add more
people.
to them.
Mm.
That's my take in the village. I mean, I think the village is pretty unique. Camden is like lots of other, New England, downtowns and villages, and there's a lot of character there. And again, rather than cutting it up, letting people use more of their house and get more people into them. That's my thought. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was thinking the other thing is that, when you look at these parts of town, the lots are, I mean, to sort of to Anita's question of, a lot of them are within 200-300 feet different. So they feel like they're roughly the same size, even when you come through. And the houses are pretty much, we have existing structures. There's not a lot of empty lots in this part of town that you'd be looking at new structure. And most of the houses are kind of the right size for the lot. But to your point of like, there are a lot of bigger houses that maybe have one or two people living in them that could easily be adapted to a multifamily unit with some tweaks to our zoning, that would mean it would still look the same and feel the same, but use those houses a lot more efficiently and give people options, which I think would be great.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
But what I was just sort of getting to is like, when you look at it and we see the lots, but if you start, like when you were going down Pearl Street with your cursor, I'm thinking, well, if you walk down Pearl Street, you don't see a lot of empty lots that you think, oh, well, somebody could buy that lot and build something. Like there's not a lot of vacancy through there. There's just a lot of charming homes.
Agreed.
So
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
Chriso, are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You were saying in the beginning, 1 and 2 family homes on 10,000 square foot lots, or the minimum is 10,000 square foot lot. Is that correct?
Right now, minimum lot size for a single family home is 10,000. If you want to add a second unit to that home, you need 17,500.
But were you saying to reduce it to 10,000 square feet for a two-family home also?
For the two family home, I was just going to say 1 and 2 family homes are allowed by right. So you could put the two family home on 10,000. You wouldn't have to have more land.
Okay.
But I think, this is a tough one. I mean, and then we do allow multifamily in the village zone. And then, but then you're at 7,500 square feet per dwelling unit. And we could keep that, reduce that and say the third unit, if you want a third or fourth unit, you need 5,000 additional square feet for those third and fourth units. I mean, that's possible. I don't envision that happening. I mean, once you get to a 3 unit, if I take a single family home and I convert it to a 3 unit, I'm putting a sprinkler system in that whole building.
Yeah.
And that, not that people don't do that, but to do it for rentals in Camden's probably, I just don't see it happening. I see 2 units happening. You don't have to sprinkle those, but if I go to a 3 unit, you got to sprinkle.
It's also a lot easier with a lot of those houses. There's a lot of houses I could envision doing 2 unit, an upstairs, a downstairs type of setup, but trying to start to split it into 3 gets a lot more work and complication and less return for the investment.
Or a front and the back half, I mean, I really see that. I mean, that's kind of how they work. So those are my thoughts in the village. I mean, I think that makes sense in my opinion.
Yeah. So you're looking for, concrete direction to move forward on something, or is this just sort of something to think about?
Well, as always, I mean, June happens very quickly, and March happens quickly. So we will need to start doing, public hearings on these. So
why don't I just sort of summarize? It seems like support is probably here to allow for 2 unit houses on 10,000 square feet. Bring that up, and then we can have a formal hearing and discussion on it. But I don't see a lot of opposition, and maybe there's more discussion to be had. But and we certainly want to involve the public, so that could be something that could be added to your growing to-do list.
Will do. So just taking that one step further, what about, since we do allow multifamily in the village, do you want me to go to 5,000 square feet then per dwelling unit? If you're going to do
additional, I think that's reasonable.
If you do two on 10,000 is 5,000. Yeah.
Right. Make sense?
Right. So if you get to 3, it'd be 15,000.
Right.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, I'm not against that.
Perfect. Additional units need 5,000. Yep.
So presently it's 10,000 with 7,500 for an additional unit, right? And what you're saying is that this would be 10,000 with 2 units permitted, which is presently possible. And if you add another one, it would be 5,000 more square feet rather than 7,500 more square feet. I'm a little confused about that.
So right now it's not possible to do the 1 and 2 family on 10,000. What's possible is 1 and 2 family on 17,500. 15,000, sorry, it gets to 7,500 square feet per dwelling unit. So my thought was we would go to 1 and 2 family homes is 10,000 square feet, and you want to add a third 5,000. And what this does do is it doesn't allow you to break the lot up into a 5,000 square foot lot.
Right.
Which I think that's a concern.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. And again, we're not deciding anything right now. We're just,
Right.
again, going to have a more robust discussion on it.
Perfect. Okay. And I'll have Leticia work on maps. I think they're very discussion, and we'll on the village extension, Ethan. And we'll get you guys.
The map is great. Like that.
Yeah, very helpful.
Jeremy, did you see Jeannie's suggestion that Leticia lay on sewer lines?
Yep, can do. And we'll do.
All right.
That's all I had.
Good discussion, everybody. I think that wraps us up.
One
Um,
thing, next.
Oh, Jeremy, no, you already had your one thing.
No,
Well, this
it's
is-
still on the agenda.
This is next step. So I got the next steps on the ordinances. 100 Mount Batty, which is Crane Sports, Mike Mullins' project that he has over there, his building, the old MBNA building at the corner of Mount Batty, wraps around. Coastal Mountain Land Trust is on the opposite kind of kitty corner to them.
Garage.
Yep, the garage there. He had a project that went to the planning board. I don't think any of you were on the board then. Mark was, for kind of outdoor expansion of storage, kind of a parking lot. That went to the planning board. It got approved. There was public comment in the neighborhood on it. It did get approved. The public comment wasn't overly anything. It was, I think, addressed ultimately. It was about landscaping kind of stuff. That project, the approval expired because they didn't start it within the time frame. So they have to come back to the planning board for approval again. So it's nothing you've seen other than Mark Siegenthaler. They're, I think, trying to do this without a pre-application meeting, which is fine, and they can do that. I was pushing for a pre-app meeting so that they could lay out the project for you, lay out its history, and give you time to be familiar with it up front so that when we do get to a public hearing, we could hopefully move through the public hearing relatively, a little more efficiently, and it be a one-night public hearing potentially, as opposed to the 2 or 3 night process that it could develop into. And I don't want that to happen necessarily unless it's needed. So I'm trying to get them to do a pre-app meeting. They may not do that, and we may be at our next meeting with that application before you. Next steps on COVID. I had talked to Ethan a little bit. Remember, we're operating under remote COVID policy. Ethan and I chatted about it. I mean, I do have concerns. Again, I got 2 little ones at home with no kids, with no vaccine. And I have concerns about it, and cases are not going down at all. They're continuing to go up. And, I think we were talking earlier before the meeting started that there's significant cases in Camden right now and around. So I think it's my thought, and I think Ethan's preference, to kind of try to keep these remote as we can, especially, we've got the holidays coming up too. I certainly don't want to be I know we don't get a lot of public at our meetings, but before the holidays, to be honest with you. So that's my thought. We do need to have another hearing and have a vote on doing a public remote meeting policy again, if that is everyone's desire and if you're okay with that. I want to get back to in-person meetings too at some point, but I know the select board's having meetings and people or other committees are in person. I just come from it from a little different perspective. It's my workplace. It's not necessarily, so those are my thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts are. Anyone?
I think
Yeah,
it makes
Jeremy already
sense.
spoke for me, but I'm definitely a strong proponent of keeping it remote for now. Go ahead, Pat.
No, I was just going to say I am too, especially with the rates of COVID around here. I think it makes a lot of sense to continue this way.
Yeah. And they just giving thumbs up, and I'm sure Chris will be all for it.
Yeah, well, I think also just the makeup of our board and the work we're doing right now with travel schedules and whatnot, it seems, I think if we had a more hot burner hearing, that there was going to be some more public input. I just know that one of the ones that we did on the ZBA, I think it was, I can't remember which issue it was, but it was like a 4-hour Zoom that was pretty brutal to get through.
Is that Pleasant Ridge subdivision?
Was it that? Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the
Appeal.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the end, it was just like, and it could, because of getting people in. So I think that, if we know that there's going to be a hearing with public input, there might be a moment, if we feel safe to do something in person, just because the technology component, when you start having 10, 15 people trying to chime in, gets.
Yep. And I know the select board did implement the hybrid system. I mean, so it can be a little, I think, safer than initially. However, and we have the ability to be remote. But I don't, again, I guess I can be told what to do. That's fine. But I don't know.
Yeah, sounds like we've got a pretty good
Yeah.
quorum for,
Okay. Keeping it
remote for
remote for
now.
now. Okay,
Yep.
sounds good.
Jeremy, will you be
Yes,
keeping
ma'am.
the planning board apprised of what's happening at the tannery lot, or is that not in our bailiwick?
It's not in your bailiwick until the select board says do something zoning issues, and that's when it would be. We'll say there is a workshop next Thursday at 1:00. That will be, I think it's going to be probably a hybrid remote and in person. That's be a workshop with the select board. Likely, just so everyone knows where we are, we have a cleanup that has to be completed by the end of September of 2022. That's next year.
Yeah.
That's like 9 months from now. And we have a federal grant to clean up the site. We have tried to work with developers. We tried to work the select board to bring something to voters. It didn't happen in June, and it didn't happen obviously for November. But this grant, we have spent like $30,000 of it. We have a bunch of match we need to put towards it, but we have like 170,000 or whatever of federal funds that we're going to have to turn back, plus the 30 we've used if we don't finish this thing. And we need to facilitate a cleanup there that can hopefully in the future facilitate development. And that's the intent of Brownfield's program. So what I'm going to be asking, well, just telling the select board for the most part is that we've got to move this forward. We have, it's a federal grant, and there's 30 days of public comment period on this plan, and 30 days of public comments for the EPA, and 30 days for bidding, and 30 days for this and 30 days for that. You add all that up, all of a sudden we're like, I'm at August and I'm like, this got to be done by the end of September. And it's a close out the grant. And without moving it along, we're going to be really in a bad place. And then we won't have a development opportunity even after we cap it, because we won't cap it if we don't cap it. So no one's going to come and touch it. So so that's going to move forward. That's next Thursday, Anita.
Thursday at 1?
1:00. Yep.
Okay.
And I know there's concern about the riverbank and all that, and I really appreciate it, but we have limited funds to deal with the cap, and the intent of Brownfield is reuse, sustainable redevelopment. So hopefully, and the cleanup entails capping the site. It's not about necessarily the water leaving the site, or it's about contact between people and the soil that's underground. So how you deal with that is you cap it, you put a soil cover, whether it be 12 inches or 16 inches or 18 inches of soil and landscaping. You could do pavement, you can do whatever. You can also exclude people from certain areas to prevent people from being in it, and deed restrictions on the property. So I think it'll be all of the above, to be honest with you, depending on where we are and what we find. If we find really nasty stuff that doesn't, we know there's lead, but we know that we don't know exactly the extent of some of it until we actually start removing it and getting it sampled. If we get things sampled and it shows up that we need to remove it and take it to a hazardous waste facility, that's like $400 a ton as opposed to like $50 a ton. So the cleanup costs can vary widely. So we just need to get moving on it.
Has the town abandoned the concept of deciding what the ultimate use would be by evaluating and deciding upon the various proposals that were presented to the town? It sounds like
there is no opportunity for the town to work with any of those entities to facilitate a cleanup at this point, right? Because we just don't have the timing. Things would need to play out. We'd have to enter into a development agreement. We'd have to go to town vote. All those things need to happen. Because of the deadline, the 30 days and the 30 days for public comment and the construction documents, and then the actual hiring a contractor, qualified contract. It just can't be any earthwork contractor to do it. It has to be someone who meets the standards
Right.
to come in and,
We are kind of running far afield
Yeah.
of the
sorry,
planning
trying
board
to-
meeting here. So this is something that can be taken up outside of the
trying
hallowed
to
halls.
clarify for Anita. Anita, you
No, I
can
get
call
it.
me too. Call me if you'd like. The
You
intent.
know me, I'm
will be-
a stickler for deadlines.
Yeah.
The intent will be that the site will be capped in such a way that whatever way the town goes, whether it be a public park, whether it be a industrial development like Mike Mullins wanted, or an apartment project, or 3 house lots, the intent will be to have the cap done in such a way that whatever the way the town goes, that new person, new entity will be able to move forward and have to clean it, deal with the cap that's in the ground on their own.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
the way it is.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Signing off for
you.
tonight. Thanks, everybody,
Bye.
for your input and
Okay,
your time.
thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
all.
Meeting. Good night.
All right, bye.
Thanks.